Activities first. Don't focus on the results and the scorecard. Focus on activities. You've got to do the business development activities, the LinkedIn posts, the networking, getting out there and speaking on whatever friggin' stage you can get on initially, even if you're not being paid for it, but practice your craft. Just do the activity, because activity precedes results. And nothing annoys me more than people complaining about the revenue results they're not getting because of the activity they haven't been friggin' doing.
This episode of the Speaker Driven Business podcast is actually with one of my favorite humans on the planet. Now, Ian Stephens, CSP, is the 2025 Keynote Speaker of the Year for Australia. He is also an incredibly accomplished professional speaker, having spoken at 29 countries, presenting to more than 2,000 events, spanning more than 20 years. He's high energy, high impact, high knowledge. And what I can tell you is that even though there's all these accolades, and literally you will hear me talk about just how many accolades there are during the conversation, one of the things that I absolutely love and adore about Ian is he is an incredibly generous man of heart and nature. He has been behind the commercial success of so many professional speakers in Australia who, because of his sales knowledge. But when he's not actually helping out our industry, he is one of the most in-demand sales trainers and sales experts for corporate sales teams, both national and multinational. The man is a living, walking, breathing sales genius. He was also one of our speakers and facilitators at the Business of Speaking Conference 2025. And yet again today, which is weeks and weeks after that conference, I had a message today saying, I know the entire conference was amazing, but something in Ian's session changed how I viewed the world, and you backed it up with what you brought to the table afterwards. So it is my pleasure to bring one of my very good friends to you, Mr. Ian Stephens, CSP. Settle in, because this is a great conversation. There's a lot of laughter and a lot of insights and a lot of things that are going to change your world. Welcome back to the Speaker Driven Business podcast. And this is a conversation that actually should have happened before now, but it's happening right now. And I'd love to say a massive welcome to our guest today, Ian Stephens. Hello, Ian.
Hello, Jacqueline. Great to be on the podcast.
Yeah. So instead of just being in your ears, I'm in your face right now. So, Ian, I'd love to know, I know where you are. In fact, you live in a beautiful part of the world, not very far from where I live. But for everyone listening along, where in the world are you right now?
I'm in my home office facilitation studio at Buderim on the Sunshine Coast, and I have one of those gorgeous weeks where I haven't had to get on a plane. It's just so nice when that happens. Yeah, facilitating and speaking in Brisbane, so I did have a bit of a drive, but then some online webinars, some one-on-one coaching, but just hanging around home this week, which I love it when I don't have to get on a plane.
Yeah, it's so interesting, is that when we start, whatever career it is, because I remember actually being a consultant, start going, it's going to be so good to be traveling all the time and doing all the things. And then like 15, 20 years in, sometimes 5, you're kind of like, flying's kind of overrated. And we all had to build that muscle again after COVID, didn't we?
Yeah, we did. And this is my 27th year. And before COVID, it was like I was away 180 nights a year speaking and or training. And now it's about 90. And that's great. It was a deliberate strategy. Even 3 years before COVID hit, we had a strategy written on a piece of paper, which was less of Ian in the air and more of Ian on the air. And we deliberately, we'd set up 9 e-learning programs of everything I teach, and 138 lots of 7-minute videos we filmed in a green room studio. And then got it all up and running even before COVID happened. But it was interesting. It was my mindset. Ego, I was thinking I'm more effective in the room rather than via an e-learning platform. And of course, so I hadn't sold it. But when COVID hit, suddenly the resistance to online e-learning programs went through the floor. And I've incentivized. So the business of speaking, and I'm an educator who speaks, and I train a lot in addition to my keynotes. But I wanted a business where sustainable, ongoing, without me reaching that point of burnout. And after 25 years, I've been there where what you were talking about, another airline flight, for crying out loud. So
and forgetting what airport you're in.
Yeah, exactly. and then which hotel you're in and which room. But now it's great because I incentivize my clients that I can come and do a 2-day training workshop for you, fly in, fly out, but you'll get better results if I just come and do a 1-day launch at the start or a 1-day implementation workshop at the end, and get your people doing the 3-month e-learning drip-fed program, and I'll do monthly webinars with them. And suddenly I'm an extension of the team for 3 months. And
which is also more impactful.
Absolutely. Spaced repetition, they're putting a few things into practice, and they're coming back and we're debriefing how that's gone. With your Speak More Collective, you're going deep over a long period of time with your clients, and it works so much more effectively, and I get to sleep in my own bed more often.
I know, and sometimes even sleep in.
How about that? So yeah.
I do love all of this too, because actually, and this is something I don't disclose very often. So when COVID came along and we were all at ground zero, we were all together in Adelaide, and as we went into lockdown, but my business had just started to take off in the US at that stage, which was flying over every 5 or 6 weeks and actually physically delivering. And we'd crossed some really major goals and thresholds just in that 2 to 3 months before March 2020. And so then to have within 3 weeks of that hitting, to have the business flatline, like literally nothing and no revenue, I actually went, this isn't for me, because same as you, I can't train people how to speak if I'm not in the room with them, right? I can't teach people how to pitch and position if I'm not in the room with them. I have to do live workshops. And so I just went, and I had people around me, stakeholders, all going, just take it online. I was like, nope. I was literally, nope. And then it was actually the Australian Institute of Sport, because I worked with a gold medal Olympic alumni. And they said, while we've actually got all the athletes at home for once, we'd love to ramp up the training. And I was like, on one hand, I was like, it's not going to work. On the other hand, I was like, the AIS, and I don't want to lose this agreement that I've got with them. I was going to have to suck it up and do it. And then what blew me away was, in some ways, and you don't get that belly-to-belly connection, but in so many ways we were getting just as strong outcomes. And I had to shift my thinking rapidly.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And did you find that the same thing, or was that shift?
Absolutely. It was a mindset shift. Yeah, Karina actually challenged me. Well, we've had our online programs up and running for 2 years, but you've never pushed them or made them work. What's the limiting belief going on that you need to get over before we can accelerate our online practice? So, yeah. So there's 2 things there. Don't share a lot of your NLP software with your partner, because she'll pick her up every now and then. I had to do a belief rewire on my own thinking. But I would say to anyone who's serious about speaking as a profession, and you're working with lots of emerging speakers, it's that was a surreal day in Adelaide when the 19th
I just got goosebumps
March,
again.
Yeah, there's 150 professional speakers in the one place, and the PM's announcing that next Wednesday the country is shutting down, and for the next 24 hours people's phones are just pinging with cancelled, postponed, cancelled. And I say to speakers, when they say, what's the biggest lesson you've learned, is that keynote speaking is not the only arrow in my quiver. Because we saw people that only were keynoters, they were out of business overnight. It was devastating.
And one of the things I remember from that weekend was, on one hand, because remember, we all had conscious conversations. Do we stay and see the conference through, or do we try to get home and go home now and get things in there? And we 95% made a conscious decision that we would stay till the end because we could still get home. And I still remember walking to Adelaide Airport and there was no one there on the Monday. It was empty. But I say to people all the time, on one hand, I feel like it was so good that we were all together. And on the other hand, the vicarious trauma almost of watching some of our greatest speakers lose their world in a matter of hours was also something I think we all carried with us.
Absolutely, which is why you need to position that half-hour workshop, that one-day training day, that one-on-one coaching, emceeing, whatever is another skill set you can add to your offering, so that you're not just in one business that can be flattened by those sorts of events.
Or an attitude that makes you think you got flattened by one set of events when you could have just gone online.
But we've seen it before repetitively. We've seen everyone who owned a small business in an Ansett Airlines terminal out of business overnight. So it's breadth and depth in not only what you offer to the marketplace, but breadth and depth in your client base as well, which I think is really important.
It's really interesting you say that, because the Ansett collapse, my husband V1, so version 1, he and I were travel wholesalers and Ansett preferred. So we lost tens of millions with that collapse. The 9/11 and the GFC both put the world into lockdown and events stopped. And I knew that from a travel perspective, right? So when 9/11 happened, we had over 500 people stuck around the world. And it wasn't just Ansett that collapsed. It was like there was something like 37 airlines collapsed in the first 2 weeks. So as you get them on a flight to get them home, that airline would collapse. And so the world, and one of the things I think of is, like, you've been here for 27 years, you've been through all of those things. But when the world comes back, and this is what we're seeing right now, when the world comes back, it's almost like they crave the events and connection even more because it got taken off them. Have you been evidence to that whenever we go through these bubbles?
Yes, absolutely. And I know these sorts of events are going to come on average about once a decade. So you've got to be ready for them. And that's why there has been a swing back to live events for a while, but there's far more awareness that hybrid is the way to go, and a combination from a learning perspective is where I want to play, and I get to stay home a lot more. So.
Yeah, which is amazing. So we're kind of talking, we went straight into where you are now and hints and glimpses of you're an educator from stage. I'm going to say right now my line, and I know I used it at my conference, I'm going to use it again. Like, you've won so many awards in the Australian speaking industry that they're going to give you an award next year for the person who's won all the awards there is to win, and we can't give him anything else. So that's Ian Stephens, speaker, educator, all the awards. And I will list them properly in the show notes because they are incredible awards. So we'll give them due honour in the show notes and the introduction that we do. But that's Ian Stephens now. Where did Ian Stephens start?
Well, it's interesting. I tell people that my first formal, kind of speaking in public event was when my hockey team won a weekend carnival. And as you do when you're thinking about who's going to make the acceptance speech, you dob in the person that's not there. And I ducked off to the loo because I was kind of busting after the game. And so I got dobbed in to do the acceptance speech. And I was so nervous as a 16-year-old. There's about 300 people there. And our team had been given the ladies' club rooms to sleep in. And we'd bought our sleeping bags and all that stuff. And so, Freudian slip, instead of thanking the ladies for the use of their club rooms, I thanked the club for the use of their ladies. And it got a great laugh. It got a great laugh, and they were very tolerant with me, and I kind of got hooked on engaging and entertaining an audience at that point. But fast track, I ended up in the Wesfarmers Federation Insurance Group. So I'm a marine insurance underwriter by trade with cargoes and transport. But when you are made a supervisor in the Wesfarmers Group, you have to go on this Performax leadership program for any supervisor, team leader and above. Everyone did it. And the only way I can explain it, Jacqueline, was like a quiet knowing. It wasn't a whispering that I could hear, but it was a quiet knowing that person out the front facilitating that program, that's the sort of thing you need to be doing. That's your calling, that's your mission, your purpose, your identity. And if I did anything, Jacqueline, I just looked for opportunities to follow that nudge. And the longer I stayed in the corporate world, every conference event I went to, every speaker I saw, that nudge got louder and louder until it was kind of overwhelming. So I took a job in the East. I moved east with the Wesfarmers Group. Now, I pay homage to our colleagues who do it from the West Coast, and they do it very successfully. But I also knew 80% of corporate head offices are on the East Coast, and I didn't want to spend my entire life on a plane. So we moved east with the company. But within 18 months, I discovered this Crocodiles, Not Water Lilies culture development and leadership program. You can't make this stuff up, right? Be crocodiles, not water lilies was kind of the analogy. And I just had to follow my calling. So 3 months after meeting my mentor, Roger Anthony of Crocodiles, Not Water Lilies, I said to him, can I come and work with you? And we collaborated. And I was going to wait 6 months to hand in my notice. But when you've mentally made a decision to move on...
Yeah, it's time to go. I see it all the time.
Yeah, so I made the leap and I jumped straight out. And I tell people within 6 months, I was facilitating the odd workshop. And I say odd because they were really odd. I didn't know what I was doing. Right?
Yeah, they're always, when you start, like someone actually asked me the other day for my first ever keynote script, my first FSD, we called the first shitty draft. And I'm like, yeah, I think I still got that. And I pulled it up and went, oh no, that's not going into the public. That's not going into public consumption.
No. It was like the first time they chuckled, the second time they laughed, the third time it seemed to go a lot better. But yeah, it was weird days. But after 6 months, I am doing the odd workshop, getting the odd keynote, but I was also dead broke. Right, because there's no money coming in the front door for a while I'm building this business.
As you get moving, it can be really tough financially, and that's the God honest truth.
Yeah, absolutely. So I made a couple of sales. I tell people I sold my house, I sold my car, I sold my daughter's kidney, anything to kind of stay.
Anything moving.
Yeah. But eventually the sales did come, and it's been a wild ride. It hasn't been without its challenges. We've talked about this stuff. I think anyone that's survived in this industry 20, 30 years, you've gone through some highs and lows. It's character building, and they become your stories. That stuff becomes stories.
They add to the arsenal, don't they?
Absolutely, yeah. So that's kind of where I've come from. So as a sales leader in the corporate world, which is why I tend to partner with switched on sales leaders who are looking for Salesforce effectiveness tips and tools so they can sleep at night knowing their revenue's actually going to happen. So I go out, that's my pointy entrance into the market as sales, but I'm also capable of doing a lot of other things. And once they learn that, they tend to use me in other areas.
So I would love to unpack that right there, because this is one of the things I've always said is, what is your arrowhead? What is the thing you're going into market with? And that needs to be a single thing. Yes, you can do all the things. Yes, you can introduce all the things. But I'm really, really, and I learned this in traditional business, as my background is not speaker coaching, it's running mining services businesses and traffic control and labor hire, and in the multi 8-figure space. And our success was always when we became famous for one thing, right? And we did all the things. You had the suite of things, but I think too many people look like a 1990s capability brochure, right? I can do all the things, and I can add a set of steak knives. And by the way, this is available too. So I'm really focused with people and adamant that we have to know what your arrowhead is into the market. And you just said the same thing. Can you explain in your words why that matters? Even though you can do all the other things, why is it that you have this really focused, targeted point of entry?
Because if you don't, you confuse the marketplace about what you are an expert in. And I learnt this the hard way when my website tried to cover all bases of everything I can do because of my years of experience. And one HR learning and development manager who knew me well, was almost a friend on the sidelines. She changed businesses. It had been a while since she used me, and she came back when she looked at my website and she said, Ian, I'm actually confused as to what you are a subject matter expert in, and I can't sell you to the board while you look like a generalist, because we need a specific expert in this area. So again, stressing the same, drinking from the same Kool-Aid that you drink from, make a decision about, I love that metaphor, the arrowhead, knowing you've got a quiver full of lots of other arrows, but go in being the authority in one selected available market, either industry or content subject matter. Become that expert. And when you develop relationships, I have a little positioning model I draw at the start of sales meetings with potential customers about this. And what it subtly does is makes them aware that I'm here to talk about Salesforce effectiveness, because that's what you asked me to come in for, but I'm also capable of all this other stuff. I just glance around it quickly, and over time they get to know where I can also play. And so 18 months later, the phone rings or the email comes through. Ian, we know you also play in culture transformation. We need some help in that space. Can we talk? Or we know you do negotiation skills. Can we talk? So it's about pick that head of the arrow and then educate as to your other capabilities. But your collateral, your one pages, your LinkedIn profile, your website, all needs to speak to your area of authority, because there's so many other people out there competing that you can't. You can be the generalist if you want, but I've got to say, when I narrowed in and focused on one area, my business expanded. Yeah, it's just a psychological thing that people want to buy an expert and an authority.
Yeah, and I think from a lot of our audiences emerging, although I was going to say emerging and aspiring speakers, I've become more and more aware that established speakers are now following us as well. But I think one of the things I've noticed as we go to make that choice is it's almost like we've internalized FOMO. So like fear of missing out is a big thing now, right? And it's like we've internalized it. And it's kind of like, but if I land on that, what happens with that? And if I land on that, what if I don't get that? And it's like, no, once you land on something, you actually get the conversations that then give you the right. And I think I learned this out of consultancy, because my average project value was 120 to 150K, but that wasn't the first piece of work I did. It always started with a piece of work that was between 5 and 10, right? Deliver that really, really well, build a relationship of trust, and then you got the door to open, and people are trying to sell in 150K retained workshop gigs and coaching gigs and all that sort of stuff. So it's one of the things that I learned was number one, be famous for one thing in the market, and also do the first bit of work, get the right to deliver the first bit of work, and then keep going. You mentioned just before about the highs and the lows. I'm going to ask a couple of different questions. One of them is, what do you think of as your first keynote? Like, where was the one where you went, oh, this is actually a keynote?
That was when Saxton Speakers Bureau booked me to do a road show for Redken, the hair people.
The hair people.
Right? With
for those listening on by audio, those listening by audio, Ian is as bald as you can get.
I've got a nude nut, so it was almost a laughing matter that I'm keynoting a series of events for Redken, and it was the opening keynote. And I remember Nanette Moulton in at Saxon Speakers Bureau, who was had seen me in action and said, can we work with you and represent you with your speaking? She said, now remember, Ian, you are sounding the key note for this entire event. That's where the term keynote comes from. So it's like you're setting the tone and the theme for everything that's going to come, and you need to hit the mark according to the brief. That's when I realised that a keynote is paid better and there's writing on it than just a speech given somewhere else in the agenda. The closing keynote has another role to bring it all together in a way that leaves people inspired to kind of get out there and make it happen.
I always say to people, I much prefer to be the opening keynote than the closing. Like I haven't done either keynote for a while now, but I always used to much prefer the opening, set the tone, set it up. I felt like when you're closing, there's actually more responsibility, because it's not just delivering your thing. You've got to really you've got to land the plane for them, right?
Absolutely. And you've got to be really mindful. Someone else might have used that piece of humour throughout the conference. If I'm the opening keynote and no one's had a chance to say anything funny yet.
It's a clean slate. So this is a really important distinction, though, and I love the way that you brought it through. That was your first keynote speech, right? But you were already speaking.
But it was facilitation, it was training, it was educating, and in a keynote, less is more. It's like 1 or 2 points maximum that you're going to drive home in a 50-minute keynote. Whereas if I got 3 days of a training program, love it, right? I've got time to tell my full 20-minute story around that incident. But in a keynote, I've had to sharpen it up to my 3-minute version. Right, and that's the difference. Keynotes are much harder than educating. Yeah. So I'd been doing a lot of speaking, but that was my breakthrough into keynote speaking.
Yeah. What was the difference after a year of that breakthrough, 1 or 2 years? What was the difference you really noticed as far as what your business looked like, what your rhythm looked like, how you felt about what you were doing? Like, what really changed as a result of that breakthrough?
Well, I was lucky enough to be spotted by the Speakers Bureau, and they started feeding me probably 30 engagements a year, which was just brilliant from a business point of view. I now had almost my corporate salary that I used to be on covered with 2 or 3 a month happening, and that was brilliant. That gave me the time to go and build my training and development business. So I guess that was the main shift. It gave me some certainty. And I'm always still, Jacqueline, around the business side of speaking, because you can be brilliant at speaking, but you're going to be out of business. Cash flow is king, if you haven't noticed, when you're running a small to medium-sized business. So it's how much money you got in the bank and what's coming through to pay the bills that's critical. And so building a business, I still look for every 6 months, and Karina's on my back about this. It's like, okay, where's our next client that we can get on a deposit plus a monthly retainer to do some work over time so that the cash flow curves aren't going up and down all the time. There's some consistency. So, and look, it kind of pulls at your heartstrings sometimes to go, but I could incentivize them to give me 50 grand right now into the bank account. Yeah, but it would also be great to have 5 or 6 grand hitting the account every month on the 15th, right? So yeah, a few strategies to take the highs and lows out of the business. I also deliberately, companies that buy our intellectual property rights, I train the trainers and they buy the license to use it internally. Their annual IP fee is due on the 15th of December every year.
Oh, nice. And if you don't know why we're excited about that, you're not actually in the game yet.
Trust me, from the 21st of December to Australia Day, nothing happens, right? And your cash flow goes in a big hole.
There's no events. There's no fees. There's no revenue. Yep. That is due. Yeah. Actually, guys, we're going to time out on the podcast right now. We're done, dusted. Like, for all of you out there, that's the only tip you need to survive. Because I know you a little bit, Ian. That lesson of that understanding was hard fought, wasn't it?
Absolutely. Hard fought, not only the hard way, but emotionally, because I've had a business get into financial strife. I've had the ATO circling. I've had a business put into receivership. And it's not a nice experience to go through where you're leasing a property that's fully furnished at the time, and you're trying to prove to a liquidator who's come to look at the assets owned by your company, which you've had to defend. No, that's not owned by me. That's owned by the landlord, and here's the proof, right? It's nasty, nasty stuff, and I've learnt it the hard way. Blood, sweat, and tears gone into that lesson.
When you were going through that experience, because as you know, I've had a similar experience on a very public platform, when you're coming out of that experience, what was the first knowing and understanding that crystallized for you that changed what you did?
Look, it was Dr. Wayne Dyer, who you would know that name. He's gone now, but he did a lot of great work on this planet around personal development. And I remember a couple of things he used to say: what you think about and think about, you bring about. So I was thinking about, even though we're at the depth of despair financially during that period, it's like, Well, that's just a pause. It's not a full stop. It's not the end of the story. So start thinking about and thinking about what your future is going to look like, right? And stay focused on that compelling future. In my one-on-one coaching work, I do a lot of work with people who, at the end of the day, Jacqueline, all that's happened is they've lost a sense of a compelling future. They've got so overwhelmed by what's going on, they've just lost a sense of what the future can look like. And if you help them reinvigorate that, then hope returns. Right?
Yeah.
And that's
the difference maker.
Thing. That's right. So I think Dr. Wayne Dyer with that quote, and he also had another one that I read every morning in my gratitude journal. So I write most days just a couple of lines of something I have gratitude for, because what we think about and think about, we bring about. And one of the sentences on page 1 that I used to remind myself every day was, he said, "No bank account or legal document describes your potential." Right? And I love that. It's like, no matter where you are, no matter what's going on. And I've had days where, Jacqueline, I've had $40,000, $50,000 out there owed to me by companies who are taking 60 or 90 days to pay. And yet I've got to live in the moment, and I'm about to have dinner with my daughter's partner's parents. I'm meeting them for the first time. They're about to go on a trip to Europe, my daughter and her boyfriend were. I know what the parents are going to say at the end of this meal. They're going to go, "Hey, the kids are saving for their trips. Why don't we split this bill?" I had $32 that I had access to at that time in my life. That was it. And I was 15 years into this game. Right now, it would all change in a few days when a check came in, you're right, or a deposit happened. But at that point, I had to ring my son, who I knew was with the same bank, and go, "Mate, can I just loan $200? I'll have it back to you as soon as this deposit happens." But I knew as soon as he transferred, it would be in my bank account immediately. And sure enough, an hour and a half later, they said, "Why don't we share this bill, Ian?" And it's like, okay, just as well I did that. Right? So that's the business you're entering. You've got to be mindful of cash flow, because it's lumpy.
Yeah, it's really lumpy, and you will get a lot of advice. I'm talking collectively to our audience in the U there. You'll get a lot of advice from people used to normal businesses about how to flatten it out, how to streamline it. And you can do the things that you and I both have done, like things that bring money in monthly. But it takes a while to get there, because you need the reputation to build those things and to get those things into market and to get that revenue. And even a project we're looking at together, we know it's going to take 12 months to 18 months to really get the solid revenue through. So I think it's also too bumping into a world where the advice isn't necessarily suited to something that is this lumpy, right? And actually understanding that you quite often, you will always have phases you're going to have to go through it. So you're going to have to get good at that in the moment management.
Yes, and you're going to have to get good at, and there's been times when I've fallen off the wagon here or off the pathway, but you've got to get good at that. 10%'s got to be put aside for GST. Otherwise, when that quarterly bills come, it's like, do I feed the family or do I pay the bill? And you get yourself into trouble, right? But not only that, putting 10% aside for cash flow flat periods, because you can get a lot of money land in 1 month, and then you can go a whole month without a lot coming in. And so you've got to manage all that well. And another tip I'd give is, let's make sure you've got a really solid pipeline forecasting report system going on, even if it's a basic Excel spreadsheet. I'm religious about that. Every week I update it. What are the opportunities I've got out there? What are the chances they'll land probability-wise? And when's the likely date of them landing? So I've got some idea of cash flow projections at least 3 months ahead.
It's interesting that you've got to do it. And I actually, because I was trying to work out the business model of this business for so long, I left that habit behind. And obviously in labour hire and traffic control and mining services, the margins are really tight. So you're actually cash flow forecasting for 120 days every day, right? Because it's big numbers, if you don't keep your eye on it, it falls off very quickly. But in this business, it took me a long time to get my head around the model, which is it's a speaking driven business. Like I coach and train, I speak to drive business into that. So it's a speaking model. And it took me so long. And I was not used to this, right? We had it in labor hire to an extent. We had it in consult, but not what it is with this. And so now I've finally got my head around it. And what I'm finding really interesting is, and I'm old school sales, so sales background, big sales background, is we've got this incredible deal flow software within our CRM. Amazing deal flow software. I've gone back to an Excel spreadsheet and having my visual sales board with Post-it notes, moving them through. So the detail is in the Excel spreadsheet, right? But my visual, I've gone back to the thing that I had 30 years ago with it's more sophisticated now because we've got color Post-it notes and we can but it's the old-fashioned sales board because I realized we have to keep it that front and center.
You do. And you've been in my office studio. You commented on my mirror that's over there with the colour pen you can write on glass, and that's got my visual pipeline right there, right in my face. It's so critical. Yeah, keep it top of mind, and because where your focus goes, energy flows. And I think that links back to what you were saying earlier about when you get focused on one particular target market or one piece of content that you're going to become an expert in. When you buckle down on that, people seem to turn up that are a match to that without you doing anything else but getting clarity on where you want to play. And I've seen that happen when I've gone, right, adjust my website, make it all about Salesforce effectiveness, and then people start turning up and they're a match to what you've done digitally. So there's something about that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I saw when you did that evolution of the website to being really, really focused, and you've evolved it since as well. And even knowing you and then seeing the website, I was drawn in even knowing you, right? So even being someone who knows you, it still drew me straight in because now it's compelling. When it comes to speaking, and I know that sometimes it's a bit like asking someone to name their favorite child, what has been your favorite stage in 27 years, the amount of countries you've been around the world, the impact that you bring, the awards that you've won? Where has been your favorite stage? What's the one that you go, this is it?
Well, and that's easy, and I'm not saying it just because I'm talking to you, Jacqueline, but it was last month at the Speaker of Business event that you curated. Seriously, 27 years, that's my favourite presentation. It's my favourite room because it was full of, 78 people who were in the speaking game or looking at breaking into it. They were my tribe. Right? And to be on the stage as an educator, years ago, before I even entered this game and left the Wesfarmers Group, I did an activity on a leadership development program where you had to sit and act as if you've passed and you're the person writing your own obituary. And what came out, what flowed through me is you are a trainer of trainers, you are an educator of educators. And I've kind of had that in the background on this entire journey. And because you invited me to speak on that stage, which was full of a room of educators or potential speakers, trainers, etc., that above and beyond anything else over all the years I've been doing this, and maybe it was just the right time for me to get a reinforcement message that that's where you're supposed to play, and that's part of your calling and part of your mission. So thank you. And then there's others that have been secondary. They're always on the stage at Professional Speakers Association or somewhere where the audience are speakers, trainers, educators. That lights me up more than anything else I've ever done. Which is, I guess, why I've really loved the train the trainer side, where I play in the corporate space as well.
You send millions out.
Yeah,
right? You
absolutely.
yeah. It's why I can speak. I'm like you, a CSP. I can speak and I can speak really well. And I keep thinking I should move towards that, more towards that. But my heart is, if I can raise 10 speakers, 100 speakers, 1,000 speakers that go out and really make a difference, because usually the only difference between making a difference and not is not knowing how to speak well, that gets you continually engaged, and the business side of speaking. But if I can raise 1,000 people who all reach tens of thousands of people each, that's a lot more powerful than me holding a stage.
Absolutely. The ripple effect. Catherine Palin Brinkworth has said that to me, a legend in the speaking industry and Professional Speakers Australia. She says she plays in this space because it increases her leverage. So like 200 times if she's educating people to educate.
Yeah, absolutely. It's so phenomenally powerful. I would love to explore with you just really briefly. We've spoken about keynote speaking. We're quite often referencing you as an educator. You had an Educator of the Year with Professional Speakers. You've taken that as one of your multitude of awards. As an educator from stage, because when I'm on stage, I'm an educator. And actually, I've worked that out. I'm not as comfortable. I can do a great keynote, but I'm not as comfortable as doing the education piece from stage. When we talk about we're educators from stage, as opposed to a keynote speaker as such, and educators cross over to keynote speaking. But what is the difference between an educator from stage and a great speaker? What is the difference?
So a great speaker is giving you one or two messages and there's an inspiring story around it usually, and people are moved and inspired. An educator expands people's epistemology. Now, that might be a new word for people, epistemology, and it's got nothing to do with alcohol, just because the word pist is in there.
I think you just like saying it.
Your epistemology is the sum total of your knowledge, skills and experiences to date, and it's the study of what you know about what. So expanding your knowledge, and that's an educator's role. And educator in Latin is educare, which is to draw out. So when you're an educator, you're not only teaching, but you're also drawing out of the audience. Whereas a keynoter is up on stage talking and inspiring and doing a lot of the telling rather than an you get me on a keynote and give me more than an hour and there's going to be 2 lots of 5 minutes where people are working in little groups of 3s and 4s. I've got a roving mic happening and I'm drawing out of the audience because I'm an educator who keynotes. And when you're educating, it's like you're doing far more in the space of managing methodology and process going on beneath the surface of the content of the message. So think about the 4-eyed fish, the anablip with 2 eyes on the surface of the water tracking for food. That's the content of your message. But they're also flicking and darting their eyes down all the time looking for danger lurking around that wants to eat them for lunch, right? Everything beneath the surface as an educator is methodology, audience engagement, storytelling. It's the process. And someone said, well, what actually is methodology? It's everything except the content you're delivering. It's everything
it's the
else
underpinning
you're doing.
arc.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's the underpinning arc.
Of saying some things that appeal to the visuals in the room, other things that appeal to the auditories, and mixing up your language and doing a whole heap of things that will engage the audience. Because we've all sat on the end of keynotes who've got great content, but their delivery's lousy. It's absolutely lousy, and you're struggling to stay awake.
I know, and that actually breaks my heart. That's why I started this thing. I mean, there was one part that I started because I just needed a way to make money after my own business failure. But the thing that actually kept me was watching brilliant people deliver badly. And that literally, and I say it all the time, and it's not a dramatization, it literally breaks my heart, right? It absolutely breaks my heart because brilliance should be allowed to shine beautifully. And somebody in our Paid Speaker Accelerator program, which is our really intensive program that culminates in a showcase, and you are involved in that, it is really, one of the people in it this year said to me, I came into this thinking I would zip together a couple of stories and be on my way. I had no idea how much I had to learn about what happens behind and under it. And she said, I felt at times like this is going to break me. And I'm glad to say that it's cracking me open rather than breaking me. But she was so vocal about how she underestimated what it takes. And it's that methodology bit that you're talking about, right? It's this structural flow. It's how do you take people? How do you move them? How do you keep them engaged? How do you not be the boring twat on the stage that everyone can't wait to get away from, right? So that's what drives me.
Absolutely. And I don't say that this to impress, but to impress on your listeners, that I have people say to me, geez, I've been nominated 4 times for the Educator of the Year award, but I don't seem to get it. And it's like, well, you're skating on the surface. You haven't gone into the depth, and you're not passionate and kind of really learning and growing and evolving beneath the surface on your methodology. You're on the way, but you're not there yet. So keep at it, right? It's sometimes a 5-6 year journey.
Yeah, it's a big journey. It's also when we look at those and for those that are not aware of these names, but we look at the people who have got the Educators Awards, those involved with Professional Speakers Australia, we know we call you stoolies, and that's a whole different conversation. But it's yourself and Glenn Capelli, Phil Nodsworthy, Yamini Nadu, it's some incredible educators. And so Lisa McGinnis-Smith, there's a Colin James, incredible educators. And so when I look at, and I've heard from people as well, I'm going for it, I'm not getting it. It's are you actually reaching? We've got a North Star here. We've got all of you. You are our North Stars, right? So we actually have the example of how deep this goes. And so for anyone listening, actually, if any of those names you don't already know and you think you want to be an educator from stage, get around them, right? Watch them, observe them, follow them, get around them. Because one of the things I've also learned in this industry is that you have to find people you can model, right? You have to be yourself, but you can model those who've gone before you.
Absolutely. And when you surround yourself with those people and just hang with their brains, they have a way of giving you feedback that it's beautifully delivered, but it causes you to break open. Glenn Capelli said to me, "Can I challenge you, Ian? I think, and I don't mean to offend you, but I think you've got into a rut of just doing your stuff the same every year." And there's a lot of speakers out there that get into this rut, that they've reached a certain level and they're good at it, and now they just repeat it year on year on year. And he challenged me, 10% of your content in any keynote or any training workshop needs to be fresh. It needs to be new. You're on the edge. You're scared about how this is going to go over. You've used your design skills to pull it together, but it's new, it's fresh, it's not repetitive. Because I did fall into that trap. I could get up and deliver any of my programs in my sleep there for a while. But now 10% of it is new. I'm playing a new song and pulling some of the lyrics out and going deep on them with the audience, and I've never done it before. And it's like, ooh, I don't know if this is going to land. Right? And on most cases it does, but other times I've got to tweak it a little and brush it up and do something different next time. But just stop operating in your comfort zone.
Yeah, and we've got to get out of it. There's no success. Ian, we're going to have to, as usual, we could talk forever. But as we do, what I'd love to know, I know that you're a voracious reader and you listen to podcasts. From a reading perspective, what's the book that changed your world from a speaking or speaking-driven business perspective?
Well, it's actually, I'll go back to Wayne Dyer again. This seems like a really strange one, but it's Change Your Thoughts, Change Your Life by Dr. Wayne Dyer. What he does in that book is he takes the 238 verses of the Tao Te Ching, ancient Chinese wisdom from 2,500 years ago, and Lao Tzu wrote these 238 verses. What Dyer did was write a full essay on how that applies to modern day living. And I find there's so much application to my business as well. So part of my weekly practice is to revisit, just flick the page, land on one, reread it, and look at, well, how does that apply to what's going on in my life right now? And it seems like a really strange business book, but it crosses the line into every area of your life.
I love that, because actually as a speaker-driven business, it is blurred. It is not, we're not segmented. We're not who we are is who we are wherever we show up. Who's inspiring you, or have you taken a lot of inspiration from a speaking perspective? Either someone inspiring you now or someone you've drawn a lot from as a model and someone to follow.
It would be Roger Anthony from that Crocodiles Not Water Lilies. He was a huge mentor and influence in my life. He taught me the memory anchor retention system. So you've been on the receiving end of everything I teach, and whether it's just 2 of these in a keynote or 18 of them over a 3-day training program, every principle, skill, model, tool is represented by a visual icon. Then there's an auditory name that summarises the main things I want you to recall and remember. And then there's kinesthetic. So I actually have people in keynotes and in education sessions colouring in black and white characters to lock it away into their subconscious mind. And I won't go into the detail of this, but people come up to me 15 years ago and they go, the Isuzu conference, Alice Springs, Romper the Crocodile. And it's like they can remember it 15 years ago because of the way in which it's delivered and served up. So Roger had a huge impact on me from a learning methodology point of view.
Yeah. Ian, you get around, and I mean that in the nicest possible way. You're involved with professional speakers. You've got a big heart for emerging and rising speakers. Who has got your attention at the moment? Is there anyone who's got your attention at the moment who you've heard and you've gone, someone to watch?
Ooh, gee, there's a question. Trying to
Folks,
think.
I finally got him to stop.
You got me to stop. The breakthrough speaker of the year, Humphreys. What's his first name? Yes, helicopter pilot.
Yeah,
gold medalist. Kevin Humphreys. Let's watch him. I think he's going places. Heidi Denning, I think, is one I've seen that impresses me. So yeah, they would be a couple that come to mind.
What is it about those two? And this is more what I wanted to know rather than the names. So what is it about those two that has got your attention? Because I think that would be really useful.
Yep. I think the fact that there seems to be a humility that underpins them on stage. So, some wisdom of their lessons comes through, and they're not teaching from a look at me ego perspective. I leave the room when those speakers come on, and the first slide is them leaned up against their Porsche in front of their McMansion. It's like, look what I managed to achieve. It's like, I'm up, I'm out, I'll go have a coffee
I'm done
with someone, I'm done. But when they're coming from a humility point of view of, here's my story, but they turn the story and let us see our story in theirs. Because we've all been through challenges. And when I listen to Kevin tell his stories, he manages to artfully turn the mirror, and I can always see the stories I've been through but it's not people firing at me in Afghanistan, but it felt like it at the time, right?
Yeah, so, absolutely. Yeah, so it's all relative.
It's the humbleness of their delivery.
Yeah. Ian, as we close out this episode and this conversation, if we could sum up all the Ian-isms, because you do have a lot, all these great little sayings and all the wisdom and advice, if we could sum that up into one final piece of wisdom that you'd love to leave for our audience who are predominantly emerging and aspiring and breaking through, what would you say?
Activities first. Don't focus on the results and the scorecard. Focus on activities. You've got to do the business development activities, the LinkedIn posts, the networking, getting out there and speaking on whatever friggin' stage you can get on initially, even if you're not being paid for it, but practice your craft. Just do the activity, because activity precedes results. And nothing annoys me more than people complaining about the revenue results they're not getting because of the activity they haven't been friggin' doing. It's your own fault. So activities first. I'm a tough taskmaster at times, Jacqueline.
Activity first, and if you're not getting the results you want, it's your own fault. I know that's a weird way to end this conversation, but I also have a thing. It's not the market, it's you. Right? And that's seen as really brutal, but like literally, it's not the market, it's you. 9 times out of 10, even when we say it's the market, it's usually something we're doing or something we've stopped doing.
You can't control the market. You can't control the decisions your customers make, but you have absolute control over the activity you do. So start there.
Love that. Ian Stephens, thank you so much.
Pleasure to be on the show.